All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are diving deep into your own mind to look at the two forces that are basically running the show. You've got this busy manager calling all the shots day in and day out, and then you've got this silent owner that it's all supposed to be for.
So let's start with a big one, a question we all bump into at some point. Who are you really? I mean, if you take away your job title, your name, all your relationships, what's left behind? Who is that person?
For most people, the answer that pops up right away is, well, it's that voice in my head, right? The one that's constantly chattering away. It's probably commenting on what I'm saying right now, or maybe it's already thinking about what's for dinner. That inner narrator, it really feels like it's the core of who we are. Okay, so let's properly introduce the two main characters in this story. First up, you've got the ego. Think of it like a busy manager, or maybe a chauffeur. It's that part of you that says, I. Then on the other side, you have the self. This is the real owner of the company, the passenger in the car. It's that quiet consciousness in the background that's just watching.
So you might be wondering, how did this manager even get the job? Where did it come from? Well, here's the thing. The ego isn't some kind of mistake or a villain in our story. It's actually a totally essential part of how we grow up.
Think about it. We don't pop out of the womb with a fully formed ego. A baby, it just exists in this state of unity. There's no real separation between me and the world. But to survive, to actually function, a child has to learn a super important lesson. This is me, and that is not me. And that's the ego's job. It's the part of our mind that draws that line in the sand, creating the boundary that makes you, you. And this is really the key takeaway here. The ego is meant to be a provisional center. Think of it as temporary. Its whole function is to split the world into two camps, the subject, that's you, and the object, which is literally everything else. And look, this is incredibly useful. It lets us function in society, take responsibility, and get things done. It's an absolutely essential tool for navigating life. But what happens when we forget it's just a tool? What if we start to think the manager is the CEO? Well, that's when things get tricky. That's when we start to see the cracks in the foundation, because the ego has some serious limitations.
The famous psychologist Carl Jung just hit the nail on the head with this. He basically said that the ego's entire job description is to separate things, to draw boundaries. So by its very nature, its essence is limitation. It's built to focus on the individual puzzle pieces, but it can never ever see the whole picture.
And this right here, this leads to a lot of struggles that probably sound pretty familiar. Since the ego is all about separation, it naturally leads to this nagging sense of isolation, of loneliness. We get trapped inside our own little bubble with all our fears and biases. And what does that do? It creates this deep ache, this longing to connect with everything that's outside of us. So we chase after things, people, accomplishments, hoping they'll make us feel whole. But, spoiler alert, it never really works.
Okay, there's a great analogy from yoga psychology that makes this crystal clear. Imagine your ego is like a super powerful microscope. It's an amazing piece of tech, right? It lets you zoom in and see the world in incredible detail, which is super useful for certain tasks. But now, imagine you trip and you spill super glue all over the eyepiece and you get your eye stuck to it. You are now literally bonded to the microscope. You completely forget that there's a whole room, a whole world outside of that tiny, narrow view. You start to believe that what you see through that lens is all of reality. And honestly, that's pretty much the situation for most of us.
Okay, so this is where the story gets really interesting. It's all thanks to one psychologist who had the guts to say, hey, maybe the ego isn't the whole story. He basically built a bridge connecting Western psychology with a much, much older tradition from the East.
That man was Carl Jung, and he was absolutely captivated by Eastern philosophy. I mean, he was practicing yoga, poring over ancient texts, and he came to this pretty radical conclusion for his time, that these Eastern traditions had a map of the mind that was way more advanced than anything they had in the West.
So Jung came up with this idea of a center that was bigger than the ego. He called it the self. And for him, the self is this archetype of wholeness. What does that mean? It's like the blueprint for the complete, total you. It's the central hub that connects your conscious mind with that huge, mysterious ocean of the unconscious. It's where all the opposites inside you, good and bad, light and dark, come together. Now, Jung's bridge was huge, a major breakthrough, but it doesn't take us all the way across the chasm. To see what's on the other side, we have to actually walk across that bridge and explore an even older system, the psychology of Vedanta, and it takes things one giant leap further.
And this is a totally different ballgame. The Vedanta philosopher Shankara gives this incredibly radical advice. He doesn't say, let's integrate the ego. No. He says, stop identifying with it, right now. His argument is that the ego's so-called intelligence is just a borrowed light, a reflection of your true self, what Vedanta calls the Atman, which is nothing less than pure, unified consciousness.
So here's the fundamental split between the two views. With Jung, you've got this dualism, a kind of permanent separation. The self is this perfect ideal you can get closer to, but the ego is always going to be the star of your conscious show. The goal is to make the ego bigger and better by integrating stuff from the unconscious. But Vedanta? That's all about monism, oneness. It says the self isn't an ideal, it's something you can experience directly. And the goal isn't to buff up the ego, it's to realize it's just a temporary tool that can ultimately dissolve back into the self. And Vedanta goes even deeper, which is kind of mind-blowing. It maps out 4 states of consciousness. So our normal, everyday waking life, that's just state number 1. Then you've got the dreaming state and the state of deep, dreamless sleep. Now, from the ego's point of view, waking is the only thing that's real, and deep sleep is just nothing, a blank. But Vedanta says, hold on, there's a 4th state. It's pure consciousness, the self, and it's the silent witness that watches the other 3 states come and go. It's like the movie screen that's always there, whether the movie playing is waking, dreaming, or deep sleep.
Okay, so after all that, what does this mean for you right now? Let's tie it all together with one last really powerful metaphor to make it stick.
This really sums up where most of us find ourselves. Your ego is the chauffeur. It was hired for a really important job. Drive the car of your life, navigate traffic, get you places. And the self? That's the owner, sitting quietly in the back seat, trying to give directions to the real destination. But somewhere along the way, the chauffeur got a little too big for his britches. He rolled up the partition window, turned off the intercom, and basically started pretending he owned the car. Now he's just driving wherever he feels like, using the car for his own joyrides. And of course, he keeps getting lost or running into trouble because he doesn't have the owner's map.
So we'll leave you with this one final thought to carry with you. Your ego is the chauffeur. You know that voice very, very well. You hear it all day long. But the real question is, have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who's the actual owner of the car?